We're going to concentrate now once more on the UK, where the headlines have been dominated again by the debate of the radicalisation of some sections of the Muslim community. On Tuesday, a group of Muslims who describe themselves as reformed extremists launched a think tank to counter extremist ideas among British Muslims. But as Farina Alam reports, their efforts are being met with scepticism by many British Muslims themselves.
Ever since the deadly attacks in London in July 2005, there has been a tense debate on whether British Muslim communities are to blame for the violent extremists in their midst. After all, the bombers were all Muslims and were so-called homegrown. Most in the Muslim community have repeatedly denounced the bombers, saying their actions were un-Islamic. Many have suggested that the bombings were an inevitable backlash against British foreign policy, particularly the invasion of Iraq. Muslim community leaders have also sought to reassure the wider population that the vast majority of Muslims are peaceful and law-abiding. But now a small group of British Muslims is making a high-profile effort to deal with alleged extremism within their communities. The Quilliam Foundation was launched on Tuesday to promote the values of pluralism and respect, free from what it describes as the cultural baggage of the Indian subcontinent and the political burdens of the Arab world. The foundation has been created by former members of Islamist groups such as Hizb ut-Tahrir. Its co-director says he's turned his back on extremism and has begun work on the reconciliation between Islam and the West.
It's the first time since 9/11, since 7/7, where there's been an effort on the part of grassroots level Muslims who've got a background in extremist groups themselves to counter the Al-Qaeda worldview and the Al-Qaeda narrative. It's the first time that the Al-Qaeda mindset is being challenged by Muslim scripture and by Muslim theology. It's never happened before in the West.
Reaching out to the wider population isn't easy in a country wary of further attacks. There was an attempted bombing on Glasgow airport last year, and the authorities say there are 30 other plots under investigation. But in this Muslim-majority neighbourhood of London, the locals say the message of moderation needs to be reinforced.
Well, I think it's a good idea, actually, to do this, because myself, I'm a Muslim as well, and the way it's going, I don't like it either. So I think it's a good idea what they're doing.
Well, stopping young Muslim people radicalised. Well, because this might be a Muslim community, that's why most probably you see violence going on. Well, go to another area where it's Christians, you'll get radical. Same problem, mate. It's just something that's being pushed onto. It's nothing, mate.
The launch of the Quilliam Foundation is proving deeply controversial, even amongst Muslims. Many accuse it of having no grassroots support and of swallowing the government definition of radicalisation, hook, line and sinker.
I think in the fullness of time, this group will be discovered and understood for what it really is. It says, for example, in some of its disclosures, that it is against multiculturalism, that it is against any further immigration into the United Kingdom, and in fact it ascribes many of the social ills in our community to the immigrant communities. It says that immigration is the problem.
And the so-called radical Muslims that the Quilliam Foundation is targeting, such as supporters of the jailed preacher Abu Hamza, were swift to dismiss the new movement, along with other Muslim groups.
These individuals, I think, can be grouped together with other non-practicing Muslims, you know, who make up those organisations like the Muslim Council of Britain, the Muslim Association of Britain, MPAC, etc., who really are the voice of the British government within the Muslim community. People don't trust them.
So nearly 3 years on from the 7/7 attacks, the debate still rages on over who's to blame for the radicalisation of this small minority of British Muslims and what the way forward is. Is anything that Muslims do going to make a difference, or is a drastic change in British foreign policy the only answer? Farina Alam for Eurofocus in London.
Well, our reporter Uzma Hussain has gathered some further reaction to the launch of this controversial initiative from the co-director of the Quilliam Foundation and from a vociferous critic of it. Here's what they had to say.
Open a public space in which it's possible for ordinary Muslims to publicly criticize extremist Muslims, something that hasn't happened in Britain loudly enough, clearly enough, post 7/7, and also to provide a scriptural, theological critique of extremists who function in our midst.
Amongst your closest allies, you have right-wing politicians and commentators like Michael Gove and Melanie Phillips. Does this help or hinder your cause?
Michael Gove is a Tory shadow cabinet minister, and he represents a certain wing of political Britain. But we also have people such as Jemima Khan, David Goodhart, Timothy Garton-Ash, who's speaking here today, and a huge array of people from the left. Dennis McShane, who just came in here to wish us well, is a member of the Labour Party and an active trade unionist. So it's not fair to say that it's just from the right. It's from the left and the right, and it's a fair representation of what we're trying to do. In other words, transcend the left-right divide when it comes to combating extremism.
The main thrust of their work in this foundation, which was launched today, is to what they call de-radicalize Muslims, young people in the United Kingdom, and to advocate some form of moderate thinking. But when we look at some of the recent disclosures of the founding members of the Quilliam Foundation, we find that they engage in the very acts which they claim to be disassociating themselves from. I'll give you an example. They have recently declared groups that engage in the political process as kafirs. This is a term widely known in the Middle East as takfiri. And whereas Al-Qaeda and many of the groups of their like have pronounced kufr and declared other people kafirs, these individuals here in the United Kingdom are engaged in the same work.